What's up guys, just doing a quick load test of the 5600X in Lost Ark closed beta, mainly because a lot of people have been mentioning they get high CPU temperatures, and I think it is more to do with your monitor refresh rate, because the game frame rate will vary between different refresh rates. They lock the game FPS to whatever your refresh rate of your monitor. So if you're on 144 Hz, those people running at 144 FPS, which a strong CPU is more than capable of pushing, will obviously be getting higher temps. And as you can see now, I've capped the FPS to 90, but I'm only on a 100 Hz monitor, so it's not that big a deal if I uncap it. But you can see the power consumption on the CPU climb a few watts, as well as the amperage at 28 amps. It bounces around, but 23 to 28 amps, and this is with a minus 30 curve undervolt. So my CPU is lucky enough that it's actually stable on minus 30 curve. Most people can only manage like maybe 10 to 15, and then they have to do per core overclocking to get stability or undervolting. And I'm just showing you here, like, I'm getting 58 degrees, 56 watts at 100 FPS, and I can just imagine if I was on, I can't unlock it because the game doesn't let you, but if I was running at 144, I would definitely be having like maybe 5 degrees or more higher temperatures. So if I simply go somewhere a bit more intensive now, I'm actually at this part of the game that's got a bit of a battle. Hopefully it's not too big of a spoiler, but it's just beta anyway. And I better turn the game volume down, because that's going to be affecting my voice. You can see this CPU, and mainly the amperage and V-core are also climbing the more intensive it is. But it goes up and down, it's not stable, it's not fully stable. I don't believe they've optimized it properly for Ryzen yet, so that's part of the issue. But I'll just make sure my audio's, oh no, it is on 8%, we're all good. But as you can see here, this is a more intensive scene, and just standing here on 100 FPS is getting me 55 degrees, while a game like Warzone, for example, which is a very CPU intensive game, Warzone runs 45 to 50 degrees in the same ambient room temp for me. So this game is definitely running hotter than normal, and it seems to, it's weird, it seems to be pushing the all-core higher than normal too. Maybe because of the way it's loading the CPU, it's not as intense, but it's also causing the CPU to run at a higher clock speed because it's not as intensive. And it's kind of like a weird side effect, is that you end up with higher temps with the less intensive game. So yeah, optimization might fix that, but for now, I just wanted to do this video because I'm going to switch to an all-core, which I know for a fact runs cooler and has lower amperage and power use compared to PBO. So this is basically PBO on a minus 30 curve. So yeah, just so you can see, and just pay attention to the V-core. So it looks a bit low here, but as soon as it climbs up, even though these are still very low numbers, like they're all 1.2, this is a maximum PBO undervolt. So I cannot get the average V-core any lower than about 1.18. You can see it spiking to 1.18 when I run around. If I use some abilities, you'll just see it climbing up to 1.16. And for me, that's already high compared to all-core undervolting. So just sharing this. And don't worry about the GPU. The GPU is not having to work very hard at all. The temperatures are actually pretty great. 59 degrees and 64 on the VRAM, 52 on the VRM. So you can just see the GPU is having no problems. But I'm just like paying attention to these this fluctuating, especially the current as well. The current is going from anywhere from 18 to 32 amps, which is fairly high considering the GPU usage is only at 34%. CPU usage, sorry, is only around 30%, 34%. So now I'm going to switch over to the all-core, and you can take a look. Mainly, like you can see in combat here, it's going from 22 to 30 plus, and pay attention to the V-core spikes. So this is on PBO maximum undervolt, and this will carry over to other Ryzen users. Even if your CPU cannot undervolt as well as mine does on PBO with the curve, you'll still have similar behavior if you tune in that all-core undervolt. So just take a look here, 1.17, like that's what we're seeing. So just take note, you're seeing over 1.15. I would just put that as like a baseline, because my all-core undervolt runs under 1.15 consistently, and we're going to see a temperature difference too. So we're looking at around 56, 57 degrees, and I'll just exit out of town here, or it doesn't really matter. I'll bring up I'll bring up hardware info so we can take a look. The maximum reported VDD current was 47 amps. The VRM's at 42 degrees, max CPU was at 60 degrees, and 1.181 for the V-Core. Okay, and this is just stock. I haven't actually overvolted the PBO. The PBO is using the stock limits on a minus 30 curve. So I'm not even using the motherboard limits. If I did, my temp would be up at 70 to 80 degrees, and if you're having temperature issues, definitely disable PBO or set the stock limits if you know what the values are. So the stock limits are basically your PPT, EDC, you know, your current limits, and you can see them in Ryzen Master if you're running full stock, and then you can switch to PBO and implement them into PBO to use in conjunction with a negative curve, if you know what I'm talking about. But to see your limits, you'd look under here you can see here 60 amps and 90 on TDC and EDC. But you'll have to look up your specific CPU because, you know, the 5800X and the higher core count Ryzen CPUs do have higher limits, but lowering those limits closer to whatever the stock limits are is definitely one way to do it, combined with curve optimizer on a negative curve. But if you're already on a negative curve and it's not helping and you've put in these limits, then the next best thing, or probably the easiest thing, is to do an all-core. And so we'll switch to that right now. Alrighty, so we're back at 4400 megahertz all-core, which is roughly the stock algorithm behavior with PBO disabled. It'll usually fluctuate around 4.3 to 4.4 all-core for the stock 5600X, but we're undervolted all the way down to 1.1 volts. So you can see here it's holding 1.1. It's very static, but it does still park cores at idle. So if you're at the desktop, you'll still get core parking if you look in Ryzen Master. But the main point is we've dropped from 56 degrees to around 52, I'd say 52 to 54. It does still climb up a little bit, but the amperage spikes are nowhere near as bad. It's a lot more stable. And you can still see that it went up to 32 amps for a second. But just watch the temperature while I, you know, fight and stuff. You can see the FPS is also, you know, perfectly fine. Maybe even more stable at this all-core speed. But yeah, just take a look at that. 54 degrees and 1.094 volts on the V-Core with about 25, 26 amps. And it's still, you know, dropping down to 18 here and there. But the main point is it's not spiking up to 1.18 like it was doing before. The temperatures are a couple of degrees cooler. The wattage is lower. It was like up in the 50s before. And yeah, it can help you lower your temps. You could even take it further, like 44. I don't have to run it at 44, I could run it at 42. That would allow me to get the V-Core even lower. So depending on your CPU quality, if you can't get a good voltage at, you know, whatever undervolt you try, just simply go lower. Because you don't, like, compared to a 3000 series CPU, if you're on 5000, you can go all the way down to like 4.2 and you'll still be performing above 3000 or 2000 series CPU. It's more about getting the temperatures down, because the frame rate at 100 to 144 for this game should be fairly easy to run for any Ryzen 5000 series CPU. But yeah, you can just watch. It is climbing up as I get more intensive and I play a bit longer, but just look at the voltage and amperage. It's much better. For me, the actual frame time stability seems to be improved as well. Like, it just seems a lot more flat. I'm not seeing as many little spikes as I saw before. It's another little benefit of all-core. And yeah, 55. Okay, so before it was hovering 56, I did see it climb 57, 58 sometimes, depending on the content. But just going back to where I was initially testing, we can see that it's stabilizing back down to 54 now. So it's more because I went ahead where there's more intense, a bit more of intense monsters and stuff. But just running around the same area as I did in the first test, our temperature is stabilizing lower, about 2 degrees lower. And look at the amperage not spiking as high, and the V-Core definitely. Because V-Core and amperage, it's a combination of both. You don't want them both to be high. So you don't want 1.18 at 3.2 is technically they're both still great. Like it's all undervolt territory, so it's all much better than stock. But 3.2 amps at 1.18 is much worse than like 3.5 amps at 1.1, because it's a combination that leads to more heat and more power consumption. So the combination of amps and voltage you'll also see reflected in the total wattage being consumed. So before, when we were at 1.18, we were seeing the wattage climbing 52, 54, and as you can see now, it's not going over 50 watts anymore, staying around 45, 48, 47, so this area. And if we kind of give a direct comparison, because I do have that clip from earlier, where was it? Here. And if we just skip ahead to the same part that I was testing in, you can see we were at 53 watts, 57 degrees. So this is, I'll go to where I've already beat the monsters, got to be fair. So the monsters were dead. Wait, they weren't dead there. Got to go back to where I was just wandering around. Okay, so around this area, look, just going down this pathway. 57 degrees, 52 watts, 1.16 volts on the V-core, 1.17 you could say, and 34 amps. So just to give you that direct comparison. And then we go back into the game, and we've also got stuff running in the background, mind you. And we go back to about here, and you know, I'll just make sure I'm running so that I'm actually moving and giving mouse input. But look at that, 1.1 volts, 21 amps, 55 degrees. So that's just a first hand, and it'll also depend on your cooling. If your cooling is better, you'll get even better heat dissipation with the lower voltage and amps. My cooling is a really cheap budget cooler. It's about $30 US, Deepcool Gammaxx 400 Pro. So if you're running like an all-in-one cooler that was getting a bit toasty, and you do this kind of undervolting, you'll get much better results, like I would imagine, because you'll have more headroom for that reduction with the lower voltage. But you can see here our watts especially are not peaking over 50, which is helping with the it's basically a combination of all of it. So you know, the voltage, the amps, the total watts are all lower, resulting in lower temps. And just going back to that video, so this was the PBO curve optimized undervolt, and you can just see it's 52 watts because of the combination of the higher V-core with the amperage. Even if the amperage is not spiking 35 in this particular section, because the V-core is so high, the wattage was high. And you can see it's not going under 50 watts. So that obviously means more heat. And I run back here, you know, wait for the monsters to be dead. I do kind of talk a bit. I think I go back. Do I go back into the game? No, I don't. So we just want to be at a bit where there's no monsters after I've defeated them. And you can just see when I'm running down here, there's no monsters around. And it is not going under 50 watts at any point. What about when I first loaded in? Like, I can go further back, you know? Yeah, it's 54 watts, and the V-core is just 1.17, 35 amps. Mainly the V-core, and it does the amperage is already fairly low, between 18 to 30, but the V-core is what's driving the wattage up and package power, causing that 56, 57 degrees. So yeah guys, I just wanted to share that because it gives you ideas. Like a lot of people will say that all-core is no good. It highly depends on your CPU, whatever you're getting at automatic, and how much luck you're having with Curve Optimizer when trying to undervolt. If your Curve Optimizer results are not that great, try switching to all-core and you know, tuning it down as low as possible, and then you can take it further by lowering the frequency. Oops, and one more thing I forgot to show, because I forgot to show the peak. So I've still got the game running, like you can still see here, still at 4400 megahertz. And I also wanted to show the side-by-side of the all-core versus PBO negative 30 curve. So, you know, most people cannot even get a negative 30 curve. So I'll just open that here with hardware info. So the game is running still, and you can see our peak temperatures dropped only by 1 degrees, but the average... Oh, well, the average is not showing properly because I was actually alt-tabbed for too long. But 58 degrees with the game open in the background on this video. So 58, and then 54 degrees with the game open in the background on the all-core 4400. But mainly just look at the V-core. So the V-core was at 1.175 for the current with all this stuff open. So I can even open Ryzen Master. It's not going to make a difference. You will still see core parking, but it's harder to see under with Radeon ReLive running. But you can see that the average cores are not running at 44, in spite of what hardware info is telling you, because hardware info does not capture the core parking. It does kind of with the effective clock that they've added, but it's still not 100% reflective. It also does not capture the average vCore when including core parking, which will happen at idle. So you'll still get vCore dropping, your average core voltage will still drop down into parking levels when you're at full idle at the desktop. So if you just left it idle and had everything closed, you will still see sub 1 volt voltages, around 0.2. But mainly I just wanted to open that just to show that we've got the same stuff opened and just comparing them, 55, 58, 1.17 versus 1.1, which is massive in relative to what it is, to the curve optimizer versus all core. And then our VRM MOS is a tiny bit higher, I believe, because it is holding more of a static voltage on the VRM side of the motherboard. So this may be not good for motherboard lifespan, but again, it also could be to do with telemetry and reporting. I'm not 100% sure how this vCore value is captured exactly. Oh, my son's gone on my Steam account. But you can also see down here the VDD current, which is the current going to the CPU from the motherboard. We're getting a peak of 40, and I've had this running the whole time. We're getting a peak of 40, you can see 13 minutes, 40 amps, 41 amps on the 4400 megahertz all-core, and on PBO negative 30 curve stock limits we were getting 47 amps. So definitely an amperage reduction. And as well, when I took the screenshot with the game in the back, you can see we've still got the game running in the background here. We were getting 26 amps of VDD current with Ryzen Master, hardware info, the game, and Steam running, and we've got all the same. We've even got VLC added on top on this one, and we're only getting, we are getting 33 amps. So maybe if I close VLC, it'll help. Oh, there we go, 24. So it does fluctuate. Again, I can't really control how it's going to fluctuate, but you can tell just by the peak as well. The maximum is 7 amps lower. And those peaks are what you want to avoid. It's like spikes in voltages, spikes in heat, and spikes in temperature are what you want to keep minimal. So if you're getting, bad temperatures, then obviously you can kind of extrapolate what might be more beneficial for you. But it does come down to your particular CPU and your own testing as well. You can also pay attention to this package power peak, 55 on the all-core and 62 watts on the PBO negative curve. And as well here with the apps open, we're at 53 watts, and the hardware info was showing 56 watts on with those background apps. So I don't know if maybe opening the map might have had anything to do with it. I can try. I don't think so. Just to make sure, like a bit more apples to apples. And we also had that open. And then we wanted VLC too, because you can't actually see stuff without VLC. So we've got like basically everything open with an extra app. I think that might be affecting the VDD, but the VDD average is going down to 22. So yeah, you can just compare all the figures here. Can I zoom this in? That's not helping, is it? Video aspect ratio default. Zoom double, half. No, I can't really zoom in the video. I only zoom to subtitles, so I have to do this. But at least you know it's running in the back, so whatever. This is the running. So yeah, I hope that helped, guys. Sorry for dragging the video out a little bit longer. I just wanted to share those values because I did leave them out, and I want to give like a unbiased comparison. So you can see that the VRM might be slightly hotter. I wouldn't worry about the minimums because I've actually had the computer running the entire time, so that would be unfair as well. I'd mainly just look at the max and the current with the game running. You can see it's about 1 degree hotter. But as well, the computer's been running longer, so we have to kind of give a bit of consideration to that I ran the all-core test second after already heating the PC up with PBO negative curve. And we can see here for a fact that the all-core is running lower voltage and lower amperage on average, just looking at the values we're seeing here. But the vCore would be the main part. So, even if you see the even if the average here was, we're not getting accurate averages, but if the average was like 20 or 30 amps, but the V-core is 0.07 lower, then, and you can see the peak V-core here was 1.18. So 0.08 lower, that's going to affect the temperature more, and you can just see that reflected in the current temperature reading with the game running. Because I wasn't doing anything special here, I just had, you know, the Ryzen Master, and 58 degrees, so we got a 3C temp drop. Not that great for an air, but it's just a cheap air cooler. So yeah, just relative though, for whatever setup you're running, you might be able to get better results, especially if you're on limited cooling. If you're on a stock cooler, you might see a more dramatic decrease. Or if you're on a higher end cooler, you might also have more headroom for better temperatures overall with the all-core. And nothing stops you, because it's specifically, I'm testing with Ark, and Ark is in closed beta. Nothing stops you saving a profile in the BIOS just for Ark, because you know you're going to be playing Ark for the day, and then having your normal profile with your PBO curve, whatever, because that's what you prefer for your idling. You do get better idles with PBO and the stock algorithms, and then you have that profile to switch back to when you're done with Lost Ark. So yeah, just to give you ideas. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.